to Hogan Gidley, who is Deputy Press Secretary and Senior Advisor to the President of the United States, live at the White House. Great to have you with us.
It's great to be with you. I tell you, I don't think I've ever followed Merle Haggard in my life, so that's a kind of a first for me, and one of the things I can put a feather in my cap in my career now.
I'm going to send you that song. You got to play it to your staff.
Because, I got it. No, I have all of Merle stuff. What are you kidding? I'm from the South.
I mean, right? You're from the South, right? You're a Southern. You got to have Haggard. And actually, it was right in the middle of my show, and Congressman Morgan Griffith sent me that and said, "You need to start playing this." And so that was just about a half hour ago. So we've done it now 2 times. But I got to tell you, Hogan, I'm a little older than most people I hang with. I remember the 72 campaign. I remember my father, who was a union worker, who voted for Humphrey in 68, voted for Nixon in 72. He had a sticker on his car, and it had a U.S. flag, and it said, "America, love it or leave it." He was just sick and tired of basically what he called the radicals hating on, he said, this great country. You might disagree, but we got to stop hating on it. And I think that is what the president meant with his tweet. You know, when I saw that, I got to tell you, I didn't find it to be racist at all. I'm like, yeah. I mean, if you hate the country, get out. What was so wrong with that?
Well, that's the point. It's just kind of fascinating to me to watch everyone implode over this and get so upset about it when you clearly see the president making the point that there are privileges and opportunities and rights that are given in this country that you can't get anywhere else on the planet. And why so many on the left continue to try and characterize this nation as some bastion of evil instead of a bastion of light and hope for the world is baffling to me on so many levels. And look, yesterday was an interesting day because the media kept running in here and trying to characterize the president's tweets in a certain way. I knew he would go out and have this conversation directly with the American people, which he did. The Made in America event was yesterday here at the White House. And when he said that comment, it was the loudest applause I've seen him get, or heard him get, I should say, from the smallest group of people I've ever seen him speak to. It was one of the loudest uproars I've ever heard when he said, "Listen, it's fine. You don't have to like it, but if you don't like it, you can leave." And everyone just went ballistic. I do think it should be noted, this country has had dark days. I don't think anyone would argue that. But dark days are not unique to a nation. Nations across the world over the course of history have had dark days. What makes America different is that we've come through those dark days better and more united than other nations have in the past. Most constitutions last on average around 17 years for a country. Ours is going on 230 plus because it's so brilliant in its nature. It gives it affords an American way of life to anyone deserving of it, and for people to continue to turn around and try and slap this country in the face after they've been given so much. And 2 examples I just have to say. I mean, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez went to Boston University, was a bartender, and is now a congresswoman. That doesn't happen anywhere else on the planet. That's a great story. Ilhan Omar from Somalia, spent some time in Kenya, comes to this country, becomes a citizen, is a congresswoman. That's incredible stuff. Those are stories that should be praised, and quite frankly, they should be grateful for the opportunities this nation has afforded them. Instead of mocking it, instead of saying our country is evil, they should be thankful for the opportunities they've been given here.
Well, look, bottom line is the rhetoric out of them, and the president pointed this out yesterday, has been very anti-American, very anti-Semitic, and it's just a common drumbeat. You know, my question is, with this group of people, it looks like these 4, Hogan, have taken over the Democratic Party. Remember just a week ago, Nancy Pelosi had the big meeting, said, hey, don't fight publicly, don't do it on Twitter, come to me. Well, they have this, they had a press conference, the 4 of them, yesterday that every network covered. So Pelosi has lost total control of her caucus as far as I'm concerned, and these 4 basically now represent the core mission of the Democratic Party in the United States. Do you agree with that or not?
No, listen, I think you're 100% on the mark. And I also get why they don't want to have a conversation about substance. They'd rather mudsling because they don't have anything to offer. When your policies are making America socialist, a Green New Deal, infanticide, open borders, higher taxes, all of those things, you don't want to have a discussion about it. So when the president points out all of the successes, and says, listen, here's what I've been able to accomplish for all Americans, regardless of race, regardless of gender. Look at the economy and what it's done for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, women, Asian Americans. All categories are on the rising boat here, and their argument is racism. And you saw that in their own party. Because Nancy Pelosi says, listen, we disagree. Don't push out this way. Don't be this way. Don't be this forward-facing. We're trying to get some things done. And they say, she's a racist. You
right.
see that they don't have it. It also proves the point, which is what Republicans have been saying for decades. That racism charge is the most ridiculous, offensive, and quite frankly, hollow thing that they can try and attack us with, because we're talking about substance and policy that actually affects Americans at every level for the better, and all they can say is, we don't like it, we can't argue our points, thus you must come from a racist point of view. It's insane. And I think it was exposed last week with the infighting on the Democrat Party, and I think that only continues, and I think the chasm between Speaker Pelosi and her caucus, which she cannot control, only gets bigger.
We're with Hogan Gidley. He's the Deputy Press Secretary for the President of the United States. He's live at the White House. He's also a senior advisor to President Trump. Hogan, Congressman Al Green yesterday said that he is going to force a vote on impeachment this month following what he called the president's inflammatory tweets, telling a group of progressives, congresswomen, that he promised action. Now, last time they did this, they got 58 Democratic votes. What do you make of this? Is it a political ploy? Is it attention-getting? I mean, my question is, impeach him on what? If you don't like his policies, run a candidate and beat him. But what are you going to impeach him on? The fact that,
right, that's what's interesting. Listen, I guess theoretically, people say the phrase all the time, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, but it's an impeachable offense. There is no impeachable statute in that you could just impeach somebody because you don't like them, right? And that's what's so dangerous here, is because it looks like they just don't like the president, so they want to move for impeachment. Not only is that foolish, that is so dangerous. And that means if they move to impeach a man who's done nothing wrong, who has been lied about for Russia collusion and everything else for the last 2 years, hasn't broken any laws, has been faithfully executing the duties of his office outlined by the Constitution, if they don't like it, and they just don't like the policies, and they don't like being exposed for being the frauds and the fakes that they are,
right,
and that's a reason to impeach, and Katie barred the door, because the next few presidents we're going to see after the 8 years of Donald Trump, if you're on the Democrat side, there is no downside to just coming out and moving for impeachment then, I guess. Because the precedent that would set is, as I said, it's just dangerous. I just don't get where they're moving politically at all. Look, I understand we disagree with policy. I sure don't understand their open border policy. I sure don't, even though they didn't used to hold that policy. I used to be for the American worker. It blows my mind that they're for open borders. That they are applying laws differently to two sets of people, and that if you broke the law and then you ignored a court order, you'd be in serious trouble. Democrats are saying that's true if you're an American citizen, but if you're an illegal alien, you do that, which are, several million of them. If you do that, not only should you not face punishment, we want to pass a law to change that so that you never have to face consequences for your action. I can't get my head around these policies they're trying to do. But at the core of that, regardless of the policy debate we can have, the core of Republican and Democrats, at least they agreed on one thing, that America was the greatest place ever devised, ever realized was America. Now, an entire party doesn't think America is great. And that is problematic because we have systematically eroded a bond that at the end of the day, we at least shared on some level.
Well, I think that's really what the breakdown is. You know, the Democrats accuse the president of a negative discourse. It's really coming from them. I mean, you look what happened over the weekend. We had a group of protesters in Aurora, Colorado, Hogan, Gidley, that climbed up a pole, tore down the U.S. flag, burned it, and put up a Mexican flag. This is in Colorado. This was a federal property. This is unbelievable. Could you imagine? If a conservative group had done this, or Republicans or Trump supporters? I mean, the legacy fake news media would have gone ballistic, right? No coverage on it. Then we get in Seattle, we get this Antifa leader, goes there with an assault rifle, firebombs buildings. He gets shot by the cops. Nobody's condemned him. Not one person on the left has condemned this. Not one. So you got to ask yourself, just like you said, you don't know where they're going. I want to shift.
Hold on. Let me make one point on that if I can. Every time someone on the Republican Party makes a comment, Donald Trump has to answer for it. You're telling me the two instances you just brought up where a manifesto was left behind by the fellow in Washington who went after the ICE detention center. He had an assault rifle, by the way, and, of course, Antifa praised that, which I thought they wanted to ban it, but nonetheless. He had a manifesto he left behind that called the detention facilities concentration camps. Now, where have we heard that language before? AOC. Right. Now, am I saying AOC caused this? No, of course she didn't. But that's the hypocrisy of the point, in that every time someone does something, and if the word great is in the manifesto, they try and link it to Donald Trump. Even when it's someone who likes Bernie Sanders, they still say it's Donald Trump's fault. This person clearly has the same ideology and even uses the same language as AOC, and they don't even ask her about it. They don't ask any of the candidates about it. These people who defend Antifa, this guy with the gun going into the detention center in Washington says, I am Antifa. No one has to answer for this. I think that is so egregious, and it's just not fairness out the door. Forget that. Look, we're in politics. Nothing's fair. But it's news. It's newsworthy to cover someone who's mentally disturbed doing this type of stuff, and they just refuse to cover it because the ideology somehow, some way, in small or not, links up with their ideology and their thought process.
It's unbelievable what you just said, because you're right. Could you imagine if this was done on the opposite end? It was some right-wing extremist did this, and some manifesto was found, and the word great was in there, right? I mean, the media would have descended on this whole organization, and you wouldn't be able to turn a TV or any internet channel on without this going 24/7. Link it, and all the questions would be asked. You know, did you cause it? Are you? Where's it going? AOC, right? Not a word.
Don't you bear responsibility, Mr. President? Don't you? Isn't this because of your words? It would be like that all the time. And the most weird example of that is a guy who was, as I said, was a Bernie Sanders supporter and actually shot Republicans at a baseball practice, and then they said that's still Donald Trump's fault. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter and wrote all types of literature about how much he loved Bernie Sanders and wanted socialism, and it's still his fault, Donald Trump's fault. It makes no sense. Now, I want to be clear that words are not hate speech. Unless you're literally telling somebody to commit a crime, that in itself is a crime. Unless you're telling someone to attack somebody, words really aren't responsible for this. So I'm not blaming AOC for this. But what I am saying is, as you pointed out just so beautifully, if this was us on the other side, my goodness, it would be live shot after live shot, days at the detention center talking about making Donald Trump answer for some crazed lunatic's actions. And you haven't heard one word from one Democrat condemning any of this. Not one tweet, not one comment. Forget the ones running for president. The speaker, where is she on this? Where's AOC on this? The guy used her words. Why isn't she out there saying my words aren't meant for violence? It's just fascinating.
Well, because of the hypocrisy of the legacy fake news media, Hogan, Gidley knows no bounds. 2 minutes yesterday, want to shift gears, the Trump administration instituting a new rule to make aliens ineligible for asylum if they did not apply for protection in any country passed through before they arrived at the border. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, so one of the things we're running into is that a lot of the folks who come into this country, as you well know, do what's called asylum shop. So they're claiming a credible fear from their government, saying it's oppressive or that it's targeting them, and then they pass through 2 or 3 sovereign countries that would protect them, but they want to get to America. And the international law is very clear. Once you get to a safe country, you need to claim asylum there. But these people are coming into this country and claiming asylum. And what's fascinating is if you're fleeing an oppressive government and you have a legitimate claim to asylum, you're going to receive it in the United States. But about 90% of these claims are proven fraudulent in court. So while Congress refuses to act, the president is and continues to look at all available legal options so that he can restore integrity to this immigration system that is clearly broken, and he can ensure the people who deserve asylum get it, and most importantly, he wants to protect the American people. Now, that should be pretty simple out there, and the asylum numbers are such that it is a buzzword to get into this country. To say a credible fear when you get to the border. Well, that claim has gone up 1,700% in the last 8 years because the drug smugglers and the human traffickers and the child smugglers understand that's how you get into the country. And because none of these people ever show up to court and because the system is so backlogged, another thing it does is it really prevents people who deserve asylum from war-torn nations to get into this country because it clogs up the system. It's a scam used to get into this country, and it's sad. And the president said, listen, we need a system in which when you get to the first safe country, that's where you claim asylum. You don't get to travel through multiple countries to try and get here. If that's truly your claim, then that's what you should be seeking. But as I just pointed out, so many judges have ruled time and time again, and upwards of 90%, that these cases are just fraudulent and people are just trying to scam the system to get into this country. But one more little point I'd like to make. I don't know why they're trying to come here, John. I mean, it's a horrible place, right? It's the worst, most oppressive, mean, nasty country on the planet per the Democrats. Why would anyone want to come here?
Exactly.
I mean, they risk death to come across, coming across a desert thousands of miles. Well, I don't know why they're coming here. It's a horrible place.
It makes no sense, coupled with the fact that in Aurora, Colorado, they just put up a Mexican flag, so you'd think they want to go to Mexico for asylum. Look, these are simple rules. If you want asylum, you got to go to the first country there. That's kind of the way it works. So now I'm sure this will get challenged, and I'm sure it'll get overturned, and there'll be a stay because that's what happens. Somebody will shop it to the Ninth Circuit. We'll see how it plays out. Hogan Gidley, we're out of time. Thank you for being with us, Hogan Gidley, the Deputy Press Secretary of the President of the United States and a senior advisor to Donald J. Trump. And he's live at the White House today. Hogan, thanks for being with us, sir.
Thanks so much for the time.